We come together even more so in these moments. This team is made up of toughness.
We have to realize we're trying to close out a series. We have to do whatever it takes.
Chris Paul once again from downtown. Booker uses the screen beautifully and flushes.
This is the deal. We don't give up.
Paul step back three-pointer, puts it in, and the foul.
Chris Paul is in the NBA Finals. What do you think when you hear that sentence?
Man, it sounds damn good. Damn good.
Never give up, right? What's going on, everybody? Welcome into First Take in the afternoon on Friday Eve. Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman, I'm Molly Karam. Gentlemen, how we doing?
All right. How y'all doing?
I'm good.
Man hasn't slept now in 3 weeks. Look at him.
Yeah, but he always puts on a show.
As soon as the light goes on.
Do I look sleepy? I'm wide awake. I feel good.
You look good.
I think it's incredible that you look wide awake.
Okay. Yeah.
That must be some strong coffee, brother.
California sunshine, it does things to you.
And the excitement that Chris Paul just provided, for sure.
He's a special talent. All right, guys. In the building, he called home for 6 seasons of his 16-year career. Chris Paul, unstoppable after a 10-0 run by the Clippers, responding with an 8-0 run of his own to silence the crowd and cast off the playoff demon. CP3 earned the first finals berth of his career, while Phoenix is making its first appearance in nearly 3 decades, putting up 41 points, 7 of 8 from three-point range. Let me add 0 turnovers for those 40. Here he is.
Chris Paul is in the NBA Finals. What do you think when you hear that sentence?
Man, it sounds damn good. Damn good. It's been a lot of work, man. A lot of work. Going to a new team. Everybody staying the course. That team fight hard. T. Lue, unbelievable coach. Chauncey Billups, my big brother. So many ties to that team. But damn, this feels good.
What kind of mission were you on?
Don't lose. Don't lose mission. You know what I'm saying? Damn, that feel good. I wish my son and my family come down here. I don't know, man. It's just a lot of emotions, a lot of injuries. I was getting an MRI yesterday on my wrist. A lot of shit going on. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I just want to get over there with my team, Rach. Respect. Appreciate you.
Couldn't be more happy for him and Monty Williams. Max, I'll start with you. What did CP3 prove last night?
That was the biggest legacy-defining single game in the NBA in the last half decade, since LeBron Game 7, 2016 against the Warriors at Oracle. It was the biggest legacy-defining game since then. Said it yesterday. He had the most to gain and the most to lose. Had he lost, another one, CP3, where your team is up and then they collapse, and this time they're up because Cam Payne was running the offense and doing better than you, right? This time they're up because they're 2-0 without you. Then you come back and you slow things down and you start to lose. Another collapse. Oh, no, you can't be a top 5 point guard. Versus when it mattered most, coming off the best series I'd ever seen him play, and that's saying a lot. When it mattered most, with the chips on the line, Stephen A., the man dropped 41 with no turnovers. He's on a list. We've all seen the graphic by now. The only players in the history of the game, since they've been tracking these things, the only players in a conference finals to give you 40-plus points with 0 turnovers are Hakeem and MJ and Shaq. That's it. And now Chris Paul. It doesn't get bigger than that. Well, I suppose if it was a Game 7 in the finals. But this is the biggest legacy-defining game since LeBron did just that in 2016.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with that. I'm just going to take it to a different lane here. You know, a couple of weeks ago or so, I said if Chris Paul had won the championship, he's one of the top 5 point guards in the history of basketball. And when I talk point guards, I'm talking about quintessential floor leaders, an extension of the coach on the floor, a person who's an orchestrator, a floor general who runs the team, who knows not just his job, but everybody else's job, and does his best to maximize the potential around him. And when we see CP3, the inordinate amount of playoff games he's participated in, how everywhere he's gone, teams have gotten better with him, worse without him, et cetera, et cetera. Him as a point guard proves it without question in that regard. But it goes to an extra level. I remember former PR guy John Black for the Los Angeles Lakers. Max, you know him. I love John Black. I've known him for many years. And out of the blue, he texted me because he was challenging my assertions about Chris Paul. And then he threw out names like Iverson, Oscar Robertson, Magic Johnson, Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, etc., etc. And I said, I'll go as far as to say this. When you look at CP3, if he were to have a title in his possession, yes, I would put him over Jason Kidd. Yes, I would put him over Steve Nash. And Iverson, I never considered a point guard. I covered him for 10 years. I'm telling you, he wasn't a point guard. He was a scoring machine and just pound for pound, one of the greatest warriors we've ever seen. But he wasn't a quintessential point guard. And that's what I look at CP3 as being. And so to see him last night come out there and be the floor general that he was, but then to follow up Paul George's 41-point performance with 41 of his own, 31 in the second half. He's never done that at any point in time in his career in the regular season or the postseason. And when I take all of that into consideration, it definitely magnifies and solidifies, Max, everything that you just said. But what really touches your heart is to see him go over to Monty Williams and hug him the way that he did and bury his face in his arms, because it's been 16 long years. And as I said on SportsCenter last night, as a guy that, in full disclosure, I executive produced that docuseries, Why Not Us, on North Carolina Central University's basketball team, led by the great coach Lavelle Moten. And CP3 and I executive produced that together, along with Roadside Entertainment. And you look at that, and you think about the kind of things that CP3 talked about and the kind of things that he endured. Max, he is not very liked by a lot of guys in the NBA. Not most, not all, but a lot of guys do not like him. There are more who love him, and all of them respect him because they know that he don't play and he's going to hold everybody accountable. And as Devin Booker once said, he's an acquired taste. He's not for everybody, but he's clearly for this Phoenix Suns team, and you can see that with the love that they showed for him. It was a real special moment to be there last night and to watch him do what he did.
That's why on my radio show, Max Kellerman Show, 2 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio, I said when the trade went down, this is perfect. And I mentioned 3 or 4 teams I thought were still better than the Suns, but said I'm not even sure about that. I'm not even sure about it because it would all fit together so perfectly, especially what you just said about Chris Paul, his effect on DeAndre Ayton. Because Chris Paul is not the tallest or the fastest or even the strongest or the quickest. He just wants it more than everyone. He works harder. So if you're 7-foot #1 pick like DeAndre Ayton, how can you not also try to match that? I want to say something, Stephen A. You often say you have a different standard for the shortest kind of guy, the shorter players, the shorter point guards. And you should, because those guys, the sport selects out for height. Those guys need something going for them to win a title. Chris Paul is a more complete player than Steve Nash or Jason Kidd. What's the weakness in his game, really? And now he can be validated in a different way, not only by getting to the finals, but by winning. But, guys, the reason that this is possible is because of injury. That's what happened to the Lakers. They were up 2-1. AD gets hurt. The Nuggets did not have Jamal Murray or Porter Jr., basically because he was very badly hurt, although he was on the court. And the Clippers didn't have their best player, Kawhi. Chris Paul could not afford not to lead this team to the finals. He's done it. But it's not over yet, Stephen A. He's still got to win it. The Suns should be favored in the finals.
Yeah, a career game last night, guys. We'll keep it going. Stephen A., yesterday you said if the Clippers won the title without Kawhi Leonard, they should move on from him. Clearly, that mission not accomplished. Paul George, meanwhile, had some big games in this series, but last night, Game 6, not one of them. He was 6 of 15 shooting and minus 25. How do you feel about Kawhi Leonard and Paul George today?
Well, you got to keep him. You got to keep Kawhi Leonard now. I mean, averaging 30 on 57% shooting from the field before he went down at the tail end of Game 4 in the Western Conference semis against Utah. And you see what happened after that. The Clippers were like 15, I don't know what their record was since that moment in time, but, they were like 15 and 13 with him without this season. And obviously they won their share of playoff games, but in the end, they won 2 playoff games to close out Utah. They won the final 3, and then obviously they won 2 games in this series. But in the end, there was just something missing. And, listen, Paul George did not choke. Paul George is not a scrub. Paul George is a star in this league. But there's levels. And there's a level that he just wasn't on. He was on it in Game 5, but you got to continue that on. And if you had lost last night with Paul George showing out, but they just had to succumb to Chris Paul, that would have been different. They got beat down by the Phoenix Suns last night, Phoenix Suns ran them out of their own building. So Paul George, the star, had that one game, which was game 5, where he was lights out. And not to say he didn't have other good games this postseason where he scored over 30, like 3 or 4 straight games. But what you did in game 5, when you had a 3-1 deficit and was on the brink of elimination in Phoenix, there was no reason why you should not have been able to do that at the Staples Center. You could call it fatigue, might have been tired, might have been a lot of things. He's been logging a lot of minutes, and I totally understand that. But you got to find a way to gumption up whatever's inside of you to put forth a better performance than he put forth last night. He came up small last night, not embarrassingly small like they did in Game 7 against Denver last year or anything like that. But you found yourself expecting a lot more and a lot better from Paul George, and that's not what happened. And you did walk away feeling like if Kawhi Leonard was there, there's no way the Phoenix Suns would be in the finals. The Clippers would have been in the finals based on everything else you saw. As a matter of fact, they'd probably win it based on the plethora of injuries that have taken place throughout the rest of the playoffs. But Kawhi did go down, and it was up to Paul George to step up and get it done. He got it done in Game 5, didn't get it done in Game 6, came up considerably smaller than we had expected, and that's a big reason why the Clippers are home today.
If Kawhi doesn't get hurt, the Clippers advance, period. But today, I'm not going to criticize Paul George. You know I've been critical about his playoff performances in the past, Stephen A. Not today. Because I don't care that he's less efficient in the playoffs than he normally is. It's not that I don't care. It's that his playoff defenses are better. The question is, did he play well or not? And the answer is yes. He's a two-way player. If his offense is off one game,
you're talking overall or last night?
Overall in these playoffs. Okay. If his offense is off, he can help you defensively. Chris Paul was excellent in these playoffs, and this is a big piece of evidence that doesn't erase what's happened in the past, but it counterbalances it. Just like you can't ignore what's happened in the past, you can't ignore this. And let me tell you something. I give LeBron enormous credit. Enormous credit in 2015 for taking a team without his second or third best players to Game 6 against the Warriors, who won the championship. I give Kevin Durant enormous credit in these playoffs for taking that Bucks team to a Game 7 with a chance to win it, in overtime with that shot where he airballed the 3, but he deserves credit for getting there. Now, I'd like to point out they were up 2-0, which means after he lost his help, they lost 4 out of 5, right? Nevertheless, he deserves credit, just like Paul George does for getting this team to a Game 6 without Kawhi Leonard. Like, it's even harder to do what Paul George did because he's not missing the second best player on the team. He's missing the best player on the team. And largely because of his play, they were able to get to a Game 6 against a team. Look, Chris Paul missed a couple games. Devin Booker had his face broken, everything. But they had their guys together in the end. And Paul George did not.
I'm not going to accuse you of not answering the question. But you go through that long soliloquy.
Who had a long soliloquy?
And just ignored Game 6. What I'm trying to say is this. Paul George, Paul George performed well throughout these playoffs, but he didn't last night.
Yeah,
would
I
have
think he had
sufficed.
21, 9, and 2.
The man did 6 for 15 in the midst of CP3 putting on that show. Yeah. The one person you were looking for an answer from didn't give it to you in that one game. It doesn't erase everything else he's done. But that one game, which was the closeout game, Max, he showed up for the closeout game in Game 5. Didn't show up for the closeout game in Game 6.
All right, big-time
players.
He
did not show up.
Big-time plays, big-time moments. Guys, we got to keep it pushing here because we're only 90 minutes. So plenty more first takes still to come. Which team